Yesterday we went down memory lane. I took her daughter and her boyfriend out to Milky Way Farm, which is a 103-acre farm out near us, surprising to find in the middle of suburbs. And we went pumpkin hunting, something we've done with the kids since they were very, very small. We saw some families out there with very, very small children, and it was very nostalgic in a lot of ways. It was a nice day. We were sorry we missed the movie yesterday, but the call of the pumpkin patch was too strong. Now, the dictionary defines a power play as something that's designed to increase your power or influence. And I was an archaeologist once, and it was kind of comical because we thought the Victorian era, the 19th century, was too recent to be of any interest to us. Then I got into the book business and antiques, and the 19th century was everything to us. God laughs sometimes, puts us in interesting positions. But I want to tell you something from the Victorian era, a power play that you could have made in the 19th century. There are these little rectangular ceramic trays. You go, well, what are these things for? Are they pin trays? No, they're not pin trays. They were for calling cards. You'd put one on the mantle in your living room, public room where people were coming in and out, and you would hope that someone would leave you a calling card who was from a higher station than yours in society. And you'd put that card proudly on display in your card tray and hope that all your friends would see it and say, oh my, they know so-and-so from my society. And you'd go out and you'd give out your own cards, hopefully to people of higher station, and you'd hope they put your card in their tray. And so their higher friends would look and say, oh my, this person must be coming along. We'll have to invite them to our next party. It's a power play. It's a way of elevating yourself and gaining influence in society. Now, John and James tried their own power play. They were seeking power and influence over the other 10 disciples, but they took it farther than that. They were actually seeking power and influence over everyone in the entire world. That's a pretty big power play when you get right down to it. Last week we talked about turning to Jesus and not falling into fear. This week we're going to explore understanding what it means to turn to Jesus and follow him. The disciples have been having a hard time seeing and understanding Jesus in this particular section of the Bible. They were having a rough time of it. On the boat trip to Bethsaida, they misunderstood Jesus on the subject of yeast and Pharisees. They were afraid that he had caught them out of not having enough bread with them. Never mind that he fed 4,000 and 5,000 with a few loaves of bread. They were concerned. And he looked at them and shook his head and said, do you not perceive or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes but fail to see? Do you have ears but fail to hear? In fact, Jesus would heal a blind man before and after this particular incident, and those two would end up seeing far more clearly than the 12 disciples who were going through what one scholar called a crash course in discipleship. They weren't grasping what Jesus was telling them, particularly when he repeatedly declared that he would soon suffer and die and be resurrected. They did not want to hear that. Hearers and readers ever since have been a little uncomfortable with these passages and these struggles of the disciples because we can all recognize ourselves in them. It's like they're a mirror held up to all of us, and we're all in the same boat, so to speak. Reflecting on how blind we can be to Jesus' reality, to God's way of doing things in the world today. Now, the crowning moment comes in this failing to see and hear and understand when James and John say, teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask you to do. Now, That sounds like trouble from the start, don't you think? That's such a freighted question. And so wisely, Jesus asked what it was exactly that they wanted done. Notice he doesn't agree to do it. He just says, now, what is this thing that you want done? Well, Jesus, we want to sit at your right and your left hand in glory when you come into your own. These are the positions of greatest prestige in any kingdom, aside from the person who sits in the center, of course. But next, these are it. They were dreaming of power and influence and glory. They're dreaming of a future of triumphant victory. Again, totally ignoring what Jesus said was going to happen in the very near future. They were dreaming of power and the persistent wish for a conquering Messiah. That's what they wanted Jesus to be. Never mind that he's telling them that this isn't going to happen, that this is a wrong-headed idea. It's what they really want. It shows that either they didn't have the ears to hear, or their hearts were hardened enough to refuse to listen, even though it was predicted for them 3 times. So, they made their move. They made their power play. James and John, and they did it in front of all the rest of the disciples to boot. That's some move. That's pretty audacious. But Jesus doesn't scold them for being bold brothers, if he'll inform, and who made their power play. He says, and they don't hear the question that he then asks them. They don't hear it clearly, because he asks them a dangerous question. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or be baptized in the baptism that I am baptized with? The cup speaking of is the cup of suffering. That Jesus, the cup of suffering and death, the cup that in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus would say, if it is your will, God, could this pass away from me? I don't want this. At baptism, we're reminded of Jesus' death and resurrection. So Jesus asked them, are you able to pass through the valley of suffering to be the kind of disciples you're asking me to let you be? And born of a confidence that is housed in cluelessness, I'm afraid, the brothers reply, we are able. And Jesus then confirms for them. And if they'd been hearing him correctly, their hair would have stood up at that moment. He confirms for them that they would indeed take the cup and the baptism. They were going to suffer. James would be killed by Herod Agrippa I in 44 AD. His crime was leading the Christian church in Jerusalem. He'd be the first of the 12 to be murdered. John would be exiled to Patmos by the Roman Emperor Domitian, where he would live out his old age. Jesus ends the brothers' power play, their striving for personal glory, by stating that the privilege they were asking for was simply not his to grant. Sorry about that. The other 10 disciples are mad at those 2. But they're mad because they've been outmaneuvered. They're jealous because these 2 jumped the gun on them. They got there first. This is not all that long after they were caught by Jesus arguing amongst themselves over which one of them was the greatest of all. So they're back at it. They're continuing that argument. These 2, in their ambition, they got to jump on the rest of them. They made their move. They grabbed for the brass ring. Never mind the fact that they came up empty-handed. They made the move. But Jesus here sees a teachable moment. He knows one when he sees it, and he takes it. He doesn't get angry with them. He doesn't face-palm himself. But he strives mightily for patience as he tries again to get through to them. How many times do you think Jesus has done that for every one of us? You know? But Jesus does this sort of thing. And he reminds them, he says, now, you know, the Gentiles, the people outside of us, They're the ones with the tyrannical rulers. They're the ones who lord it over others. They're the ones who concern themselves with status and will grind their underlings under their foot. They're the ones who won't educate or lift people up, but instead will keep people in line by threat of force and violence. When he says to them, that's not the way it's going to be with you, not with my disciples. And he's speaking to all the disciples at this point of every age, as Jesus does in the past, his original disciples, the present age, and all the disciples yet to come. When he says, if you want to be great, you can't be like the tyrants. Greatness equals servitude in my kingdom, in the kingdom of God. If you want to be first, you're going to have to serve everyone. That's the way it's done. You'll have to be like the children that Jesus had brought before his disciples and said, the kingdom of heaven belongs to these. The innocent, the powerless. Leaders amongst you won't be the quickest and the boldest or the most ruthless, but you'll be the most faithful. You'll be the ones who follow the Son of Man who came to serve, not to be served. It's not really a leadership style that has ever been in vogue. It wasn't in vogue when Jesus was alive. It's not in vogue today. You won't find it in any of the prevailing wisdom of any culture. It's not going to be written in the pamphlets from experts on how to get ahead. It's no way to conquer. It's no way that it makes sense if the bottom line is your only line. You can't be considering yourself first. There are no Mr., Mrs., or Ms. Biggs for us as disciples. Jesus reminds them that the greatest in his view are the ones who serve, the one who puts the interests of others ahead of their own, who meet the needs of others. At the same time, though, this is not to be a doormat. You got to remember that serving others meant saying no to James and John when they said, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask you." We're not going to do everything that everyone asks. Also, tossing the money changers out of the temple so people could worship was an act of service. They didn't appreciate it, but it was. With Jesus' ministry and death for all, a ransom for many, service got a brand new definition. Still, like the original 12, we often get that wrong. Especially if an intoxicating whiff of power comes along. But we're to concern ourselves with relationships, with solidarity, love, mercy, justice for all, placing others ahead of ourselves, raising up others instead of rising up the ladder. Humility, service, and love will be our watchwords. They were then, and they always will be. Disciples don't say, "Look at me." Instead, they say, "Look to Jesus." There's no way to fame and fortune in this path. You don't stand in the bright lights. But the way of Jesus' idea that greatness is really great when you think about it. Think about all the people in your lives who have had a great impact on you, on all of us, with a warm smile, with words of kindness, with big hugs, great food, smart advice, a gentle boost when we needed it. Those are pretty great people, wouldn't you say? Absolutely. In Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, Ebenezer Scrooge described someone just like this. Someone from his young adulthood, Mr. Fezziwig. He said, say that his power lies in words and looks, in things so slight and insignificant that it is impossible to add and count them up. What then? The happiness he gives is quite as great as if it had cost a fortune. And he thinks back to the annual Christmas ball that he would throw. It didn't cost much, but it made everyone so happy. That's how it works, serving others. Leaving others lifted up. I had an experience at the gym on Wednesday morning that was like that. Most of us who were there early in the morning, not fishing for compliments or anything, it's just the only time I can get there and do anything. We're all professional types, we're quiet, we keep to ourselves, and we get about the serious business of getting our exercise done. Wearing our headphones, working out. Well, there was one guy there who was very different. Big man, older. Big, bluff guy. And he greets one of his old friends in a booming voice. And he tells him, you gotta be here on Friday. Friday's their 10th anniversary, and they're going to have bagels in the morning. And Fred, heck, you can eat here all day long because they're going to have pizza at night, and it's good. Now they smile and laugh together, and they got on their way, and then he rounds on me. And he says, hey, buddy, you coming or going? I says, well, I finished my work. I says, oh, that's the best. Have a good day. I left with a smile, the kind of smile that none of those other polite professional folks would leave on my face. Only someone who was interested in actually lifting me up a little bit could do that. That's what we're called to do. There are examples for us of light that is shining and salt that adds zest and service to others in Jesus' name that provides true greatness. We run across it all our lives and we try to do it ourselves. So let us have ears to hear and eyes to see and soft hearts. Let us make a different play, headed for true greatness through service of others rather than ourselves. Let's follow Jesus. Let's pause for a moment of silent reflection. Amen. Please rise for